Imagine waking up to a world where every single plant has disappeared overnight. No trees, no grass, no flowers, just barren landscapes stretching endlessly in every direction. The forests are gone, leaving behind only lifeless soil. The fields that once grew wheat, corn, and rice are now nothing but dry, cracked dirt. The parks, once full of color and beauty, have turned into vast, empty spaces of dust and decay. At first, people struggle to comprehend what has happened. Social media explodes with confusion and disbelief. Scientists scramble for explanations. Governments call for emergency meetings. But no one has an answer. At first, the world seems strangely silent. Without the rustling of leaves in the wind, the chirping of birds in the trees, or the buzzing of bees around flowers, the absence of life becomes eerily apparent. It is only a matter of hours before the true consequences of this catastrophe begin to unfold. The first and most obvious impact is on food. Supermarkets quickly run out of fresh produce. Fruits, vegetables, and grains, staples of the human diet, are gone. People rush to buy whatever canned and frozen foods remain, but panic spreads as shelves empty at an alarming rate. Initially, some believe that humanity can survive by relying on meat, fish, and dairy products, but this illusion is shattered almost immediately. Livestock farmers realize their animals have nothing to eat. Cows, pigs, and chickens all depend on plant-based feed. Without grass, hay, corn, and soybeans, they begin to starve within days. Farmers attempt to keep them alive by feeding them whatever scraps they can find, but it is a losing battle. Within a week, entire herds and flocks are dying en masse. The meat and dairy industries collapse, leaving humanity with no food sources except for dwindling supplies of seafood and artificially produced goods. Even in the oceans, however, life is beginning to suffer. Phytoplankton, the microscopic plants that form the base of the marine food chain, have also disappeared. Without them, fish populations plummet, setting off a catastrophic chain reaction that threatens the survival of all ocean life. As people struggle with food shortages, another even more terrifying crisis begins to emerge. Plants are responsible for producing the vast majority of the oxygen on Earth through photosynthesis. Without them, oxygen levels, while initially stable, begin to decline. At first, the effects are barely noticeable. People feel slightly more fatigued, their breathing a little heavier, but as days turn into weeks, the situation grows dire. Cities that already struggled with air pollution find themselves suffocating under thick layers of smog. In high-altitude regions where the air is already thin, the lack of oxygen makes it nearly impossible to function without artificial assistance. Hospitals become overwhelmed with patients suffering from respiratory distress. People with pre-existing conditions are the first to succumb. Governments scramble to distribute oxygen supplies, but the process is slow and inefficient. The wealthiest nations secure enough artificial oxygen production for their citizens, but billions of people in developing countries are left gasping for air. The divide between rich and poor becomes more extreme than ever before, as those who can afford oxygen tanks live, while those who cannot are left to suffer. Scientists work frantically to find a solution. Some attempt to create synthetic plants that can mimic photosynthesis, while others propose massive industrial-scale oxygen production facilities. But time is running out. Meanwhile, the loss of plants begins to unravel the world's delicate climate balance. Without trees and vegetation to absorb carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases accumulate at an unprecedented rate. Global temperatures skyrocket. Heat waves become more intense, turning once temperate regions into scorching wastelands. Without plant roots to hold the soil together, massive dust storms sweep across the continents, burying cities in thick layers of sand and debris. Rivers and lakes, no longer replenished by rainfall, begin to dry up. The water cycle, once regulated by forests and plant life, collapses. Some regions experience devastating droughts, while others are hit by relentless storms as the atmosphere struggles to stabilize itself. Wildfires become a constant threat. Without moisture-rich plants to retain humidity in the environment, dry landscapes ignite easily. Fires rage uncontrollably, spreading across continents and consuming what little organic material remains. Cities are evacuated, homes are lost, and entire regions become uninhabitable. Smoke fills the air, further worsening the already critical oxygen crisis. The combination of suffocating heat, lack of water, and a dwindling food supply turns everyday survival into a desperate battle. The animal kingdom is also in free fall. Herbivores are the first to go, unable to find food. Deer, rabbits, elephants, and countless other plant-eating species starve to death in droves. Without prey, carnivores soon follow. Lions, wolves, and other predators weaken and perish. Insects, which rely on flowers and leaves for sustenance, disappear entirely. The loss of pollinators like bees and butterflies ensures that even if plants could somehow return, the cycle of reproduction would be irreparably broken. The only surviving creatures are scavengers, bacteria, and a few deep-sea organisms that rely on hydrothermal vents rather than the sun for energy. As ecosystems collapse and entire species vanish, human civilization begins to crumble. Governments enforce strict rationing of food, water, and oxygen, but desperation fuels violence. Cities erupt in chaos as people fight over the last remaining supplies. Countries wage wars over the few habitable regions left on the planet. Migrations of climate refugees overwhelm nations that were once safe havens. The global economy disintegrates as industries reliant on agriculture, forestry, textiles, and plant-based resources collapse entirely. Millions lose their jobs, poverty soars, and once thriving metropolises become ghost towns. 1 year after the disappearance of plants, Earth is barely recognizable. The skies are filled with smog, the land is dry and cracked, and the oceans are eerily quiet. Oxygen levels have fallen to the point where most people cannot survive without artificial assistance. Cities that once housed millions are abandoned, left to decay as the last survivors retreat into climate-controlled bunkers. The outside world has become a wasteland, a desolate and inhospitable planet that can no longer sustain complex life. In the decades that follow, the few remaining humans live in sealed environments, relying on technology to produce oxygen, synthetic food, and purified water. Scientists continue their desperate attempts to create artificial plants, but restoring an entire planetary ecosystem proves more difficult than anyone could have imagined. Some propose leaving Earth behind and colonizing Mars, while others insist that the only hope is to rebuild what was lost, no matter how long it takes. But the damage is already done. The delicate balance that once sustained life on Earth has been broken, perhaps forever. If humanity had a second chance, would we learn from our mistakes? Would we protect the forests, the wetlands, the jungles, and the fields that sustain us? Would we finally recognize that our survival is inseparable from the survival of the natural world? Or would we repeat history, exploiting the planet until nothing remains? This scenario is not just a thought experiment, it is a warning. Every tree cut down, every ecosystem destroyed brings us one step closer to a world we may not be able to save. If we do not take action now to protect the environment, we may one day wake up to a planet that can no longer sustain us. Would you survive in a world without plants? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more thought-provoking what-if scenarios.